I'm ready to sew the U-shaped part that's going to form the crotch of my pants. So what I'm going to start with, I'm going to line up the edge of my fabric with the edge of my purple tape, or in this case it's purple. I'm going to make sure my threads are going at the back of my machine. I'm going to put my presser foot down. So my needle is about a centimeter, maybe a centimeter and a half from the edge. Again, if you don't want your threads tails to get tangled up in your seam and make a blob, you can hold onto your thread tails as you get started. I'm going to turn my hand wheel and I'm going to put my needle into the fabric. And as always, I'm going to begin by back stitching to the edge, and then I'm going to sew through. Watching to make sure the edge of my fabric is lining up with the edge of my tape that I'm following, or if you're not using the tape, the line on your throat plate, the stitching guide on your throat plate. This is awkward to do because I'm going around a little tripod here. Okay, and as I come to the notch, I know that I'm starting the curved part of the seam. You can actually see it here in the video. Now, of course, I don't have a writing utensil in easy reach because I didn't think ahead. Hold on while I talk to myself. Okay, let's try this one. When I'm sewing the curve, like most of us are watching the line down here, right, of where the fabric meets the seam allowance, but instead we want to watch parallel to where the needle is. So sometimes it's helpful to put a little mark on your tape. You can't really see that. A little mark on your tape that shows where that is. Hold on. Black permanent marker. Here we go. So it's right about there. So hopefully you can see that line. So when I get to the curve, I'm actually going to be watching where that my fabric is lined up with the tape at that spot. Okay, so I'm going to continue going. Nice and slow through here, and again you can see I'm starting to curve. So notice as I start to curve, this part doesn't line up with the tape, but where parallel to the needle is does. That's what I care about. Oh, I almost stitched over a pin. That's not good for the teacher to do that. I'm coming to that seam intersection, right, again, I'm just going to sew up to my pin and then remove it. Again, I'm making sure that where my fabric is meeting the tape parallel to the needle, where that black line is. Easy part, I'm in the straightaway. Again, I like to sew right up to my pins before I take them out. And now I'm at the end. I'm going to sew right up to the end. And then I'm going to back stitch just a little bit, centimeter, 3 to 4 stitches, just not a lot. I'm going to turn my hand wheel to make sure my take-up lever comes all the way up out of the top of my machine, so I know my stitch is done. Lift my presser foot and pull my sewing out to the side. Now we need to put in the pattern instructions, which of course I can't find at the moment, say to put in a second row of stitching to reinforce the edge. So what I like to do, instead of, it says to use 1/4 of an inch, which would be the edge of our presser foot, I like to actually change my stitch width to 0, so it moves my needle over. So I'm going to do that again so you can see it happening. So it moves my needle over to the left, and I'm going to use the edge of my presser foot on this side, right, on the left side of the presser foot as my guide. And I'm going to stitch between the notches. Okay, so there's the starting point of my notch. I'm going to put this down. Hopefully you can see that. Let me just move this around here so you can see that I've got the presser foot on top of my stitching line, or on the edge of my stitching line. So that's the line I'm going to follow this time. Let me just get this put back down here. There we go. And my needle is over. So it's going to make a very narrow seam here. So I'm gonna put stitch again just a little bit. And I'm going to sew forward. Stitch beside the seam I already made. So one of the reasons I want this super narrow is I need to leave room to serge, right? So we can finish off the seam, because that's important. Stitch through all my seam allowance there. And I'm just going to keep stitching until, whoops, it doesn't have to be perfect, until I get to my other notch. And then I'm going to back stitch, turn my hand wheel so my thread take-up lever is all the way up, lift my presser foot and pull. Oh, it got a bit wonky at the end there. Look at that. Some funky stitching by Miss Bamford. But the rest looks pretty good. So it's a nice distance away from the first set of stitches, and I have enough room to serge up here. So my next thing that I need to do is to press, and then I'm going to serge.